Howdy. How's your man and them? Hope everybody's having a great weekend. It is Sunday. Normally don't come here on Sunday, so we'll see what we pull in on YouTube here on Sunday and if anybody's getting any alerts, but it is what it is. Let's get this popping. It was a busy weekend of boxing. Still haven't completely caught up. I still haven't seen Ioka versus Martinez. I just got the link for that fight. I did see highlights. I did see the CompuBox. It does look like it was a fair decision. We were worried about that fight coming in for Ioka, being that Martinez was a guy that against Ancajas, he threw almost 100 punches per round. What did he do in this fight? He threw almost 100 punches per round. He's a guy who takes the fight to you. Ioka is 35 years old, so we were concerned about that fight coming in for Ioka. He was on upset alert. If there was a favorite on upset alert this weekend, it was Ioka, and Martinez wins the fight. So I'll give further breakdown of the actual fight as I watch the fight tonight, because I just like 5 minutes ago got the link for that fight. So we'll watch that tonight in its entirety and get my full breakdown of it tonight. But I'm not surprised that Martinez went out there and pulled off that slight upset, because he's an active fighter in there. And Bam versus Martinez is the fight to make for 3 belts at 115. Martinez is going to take the fight to Bam. He's not going to be afraid, and it's going to end with Martinez flat on his back or flat on his face, because that stuff's not going to work against Bam. He's too special of a fighter for you to just overwhelm him with pressure. So that's that. Credit to Martinez for going over there and winning that unification fight. Props to him. And we'll see where Ioka goes from here. Does he give Tanaka a rematch? You know, what happens? He still fights on the table for him if he wants to stick around, or he can retire. Either way. We saw Johnny Fisher get the knockout. Didn't expect it to be that quick against Babbitt, but did expect him to get that knockout early. And, you know, we played that one. We played all the prospects on there to drive the line down, which I told y'all to do on Friday for those parlays. Drive the line down by prospect bets. Iriarte. Abdullah Mason gets the KO. We'll talk about that, right? Keyshawn Davis money line drives the parlay money lines down, and then you had the main stuff. Let's start off with the DAZN card. Let's do that. Shout out to Remy. Salute to you, the Mexican murder hornet, Calix the murder hornet. Appreciate that super chat. I would have had a great night of betting if the Foster robbery didn't mess up my 6-fight parlay, and I will be touching on that too. Anthony Sanchez is here. CY is there. Bam handles Martinez. I agree. Yeah, Foster got bent over with no lube. Shakur is definitely the next Rigondeaux. And people are saying that. Yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on that. A lot of stuff I saw on ESPN last night. DB, the boxing fan, we won't be having no Shakur Stevenson slander this stream, Calix. Please have some grace. Oh, there will be no grace. There will be no grace. Yeah, so shout out to you, Remy, $2 super chat. Salute Calix, the murder hornet. And that's what William Zepeda is. Let's start off there. Let's start off with the positive. Going into this fight, you know, I told you that I trusted William Zepeda to get this stoppage. I trusted him to get this stoppage. And once again, man, every single time I start, I get a text message or something. So let me do this right now. All right. So, and I appreciate this super chat. Thanks for 3 tips, especially Jacobs going the distance. And that was another easy one, I felt. Danny Jacobs just doesn't have it anymore. And Shea Mosley Jr. is not a puncher. So that was another easy play. I felt there was just so much value on the table for parlays last night. And Shakur, for me, messed it up because I just shouldn't have added him to these parlays. And I had to take less money and cash out in the 4th round. I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me not get off course. William Zepeda, to me, represents everything that's right about the sport. Action fighter, takes the fight to his opponents. And I think this style translates against any opponent at 135. I do. Any of them. I don't care who they are. I think this translates. I think this guy is a problem for any and everybody at 135. And this is what I talked about with this guy is the beautiful thing about an action fighter is you just put him in the fights, because even if that isn't the case, even if he loses, even if he steps up in a title fight and a certain style gives him problems, or if he loses a fight and he has a ceiling, you still have the action fighter thing to rely on. Action fighters, they can lose 3 fights, they can lose 5 fights, they can lose 7 fights, and they're still action fighters. They're still entertaining. They still provide value. They still provide value. And thanks for the super chat, by the way, DB boxing fan. So that's the beautiful thing about William Zepeda is you're almost playing with house money. Put him in the title fight next. This dude is the mandatory for all 4 belts. Put him in the title fight. Who cares? There's no reason to be taking it easy with this guy. And Zepeda said it after the fight is, I've done my work. Now it's time for Oscar to do his work. Put me in the title fight. Put me in the title fight. Now he has that. And I'll play a clip from Steve Kim after the fight with Oscar De La Hoya in a minute to sort of give you an idea of where they plan on going next with that title fight, which title list they're pinpointing. But when you have a guy throwing 100 punches plus per round, fellas, and he's that imposing and he's heavy-handed with both hands, he seems to have a good chin. He's layered as a fighter, I do believe. I don't think you can just pinpoint him to a pressure fighter. He has some versatility to his game as well. But this guy is going to get in your chest, and you're not going to be able to stink him out. You're not going to. I don't see a fighter stinking him out. And this is what I said coming in. Zepeda is a much better fighter than Isaac Cruz. Giovanni Cabrera was able to stink out Isaac Cruz. Arguably should have won that fight against Isaac Cruz. Arguably Isaac Cruz gets a gift. And Cabrera was able to stink Isaac Cruz out. And we talked about why, right? Isaac Cruz, 4'11". He's got T-Rex arms. He has no neck. He's a limited fighter. He's a limited fighter. He's a good fighter. He's a good pressure fighter. But the pressure fighting from a short guy, it's not as imposing as pressure fighting from Zepeda. Zepeda's a big pressure fighter. He's a heavy-handed pressure fighter. To me, and once again, I'm watching this last night, and I'm saying to myself, what they say about David Benavidez is what this guy actually is right here. This is the Mexican monster in reality right here. It's William Zepeda. If there's a Mexican, I've called him the Mexican murder hornet, right? Because he just stings. He's relentless. He's got unlimited stings. I'm watching William Zepeda and I'm saying, this guy is the Mexican monster. This is it right here. You're trying to hype this guy up, and we know why. We know why. He's in Canelo's division, right? This is him. It's him. William Zepeda is the Mexican monster. It's him. He's right here in front of you. Right in front of your face. And I'm watching him fight. And then it's a good, right, contrast and comparison, because he fights, then Shakur fights back to back. And you talk about going from a high to a low. It's almost like, I don't do drugs, but they talk about cocaine addicts. They get their high and then they just drop, right? That's what I felt like last night. I put on William Zepeda, and Zepeda is just destroying Cabrera. And Cabrera's trying. He's trying. He thinks he can get out in there and stink out the fight like he did against Isaac Cruz, all 4'11" of them with no neck and T-Rex arms, walking around like a real-life pit bull with a collar around his neck. He can't do it. Why? Because Zepeda's a much better fighter than Isaac Cruz. Zepeda's just a different beast. This guy is an animal. And I'm watching this and I'm saying, this style right here, this guy is a fighter. Good luck. Good luck to anybody at 135. If you think that Shakur Stevenson, and I said it right after I watched both of them fight, I said, if they think that Shakur Stevenson at 135 looks like he's boxing with 16-ounce gloves on. He just looks pillow-fisted, and he looks limited as an offensive fighter. And more on that in a minute. But if you think that he can just stink out the fight and fight negative and pot shot William Zepeda to death to a 12-round decision, good luck dealing with this guy for 36 minutes. I'm just telling you, good luck. Good luck dealing with this guy for 36 minutes. I see people carrying on about Shakur And look, man, I've been high on Shakur for a while. I think he's a stagnant fighter right now. I think his stock is dropping overall due to entertainment value, but I think as far as skill, he's a stagnant fighter right now. He's not getting better, fellas. His power doesn't translate to 135. He doesn't have power at 135. So people get carried away and say, you know, Shakur, it would take an all-time great to beat Shakur at 135. And I'm watching it once again. Man, it's you build up expectations, right? The public and the journalists, they build up expectations of these fighters. So you go in expecting to see that. And then once again, I'm watching Shakur last night, and I'm not seeing what they're seeing, obviously. But as I watch Zepeda, as I watch Shakur, I say, good Lord, man. What a stylistic matchup that would be. And good luck if you think you're going to pot shot this guy and lateral move your way around the ring for 36 minutes and decision this guy. Over 100 punches per round. They're with bad intentions. He's going to the body. He's going back upstairs. This guy is not to be deterred. This is an action fighter. This is a real pressure fighter. And it seems like intelligent pressure at the same time. We'll see when the step up happens, right? If all of this translates. But the more I watch this guy, the more he just looks like a raging inferno that's going to be tough to put out. And even if he's not, even if you outbox this guy, once again, like it's the thing with Golden Boy. It's like, just get on with it, man. It doesn't matter if the dude loses. He's an action star. He's an action star. Let me present this to you. This is Steve Kim last night at the card. And he interviews, looks like an impromptu interview of Oscar De La Hoya walking out. And he sort of gives us a picture of what's next or what's upcoming for William, the Mexican Murder Hornet, Zepeda.
Title shot next?
Yeah, title shot next. I think William's ready. He's proved over and over. I mean, he just stopped the guy that went the distance with Pitbull. So I think he showed a lot of heart. He showed what he's all about. I literally think that William Zepeda is probably one of the most exciting fighters today in boxing, especially at 135.
What's your preference? If you could just wave a magic wand and make any fight happen for Zepeda.
I think I would go the WBO route.
Borancek.
I think that's a great fight. I think it'll be a fan-friendly fight. It'll take William Zepeda to the next level, and then we go after the unifications.
Is it the easiest fight for you to make too?
It might be the easiest fight to make. It wouldn't be the easiest fight for Zepeda, but I think it's the easiest fight to make. But I would love for Zepeda to be world champion when he faces.
And so there's Oscar with Steve Kim, just giving you an idea of what's to come next for the our beautiful Mexican Murder Hornet. That's everything positive about the sport, man. This guy is everything. Good Lord. Good Lord. Once again, another guy. I talked about Bam Rodriguez last week, how Bam Rodriguez is just must-see TV. You just stop everything. You say, wifey, no, not tonight. Leave me alone. And you say, kids, go to bed. And Bam Rodriguez is on TV. I don't care if Teofimo's on. I'll catch Teofimo later. Bam Rodriguez is on. Same thing here. If Shakur would have came on at the same time, whatever it was, right? Whatever fights on at the same time, you tune it all out. William Zepeda is on. William Zepeda is on. Right? So let's just address this. Clear duck, no mention of Shakur. Here's the thing. So William Zepeda has moved his way into top mandatory for all 4 belts. I mean, he's done that through the work, right? He's put in the work. I've been critical of Oscar and De La Hoya, Oscar and Golden Boy, for not moving this guy quick enough. Like I said, he's an action fighter. Doesn't matter if he wins or loses. It doesn't matter where the ceiling is. If he ends up being a top 10 pound-for-pound talent or something like that and undisputed, that's all icing on the cake, right? It's all icing on the cake because he's an action star. It doesn't matter how many fights these guys lose. They're fun, right? So when they turned down Shakur, I think it was a year and a half ago, allegedly, I was like, why do that? Just fight the guy, whatever, right? But now they have their pick of the top 4. So if you look at the landscape at 135, what is the landscape? It looks like the landscape is changing and that Tank is finally going to fight a fight. It looks like Tank might fight Lomachenko. Somebody was reporting earlier, I don't believe a lot of these reports, that Lomachenko might step to the side to have Tank versus Shakur, and then Loma fights the winner of that. Either way, that's a picture within itself, and it looks like Tank versus Loma is probably the front runner. And then who's that leave? It leaves Baranchik. And it's a clever move, right? It's like Baranchik's probably the easiest belt to pick off of the 4. And then you see what else develops. You see Tank and Loma fight each other. Shakur is going to be there on the side if he doesn't get the fight. So go get a belt. And then if Tank and Loma, one of those two, consolidate 2 belts, then you could have 3 belts on the line if you beat Baranchik and you fight the winner of that fight. So to me, it's fine. As long as a title fight is next, we have movement finally. We have a picture that's developing finally. We've known this guy. Those of us who know what we're looking at, I think, I shouldn't say that. Like, I just think people who have a general idea of what they're looking at in boxing, it's like this guy translates. He's the real deal. This isn't just a style thing. This guy can fight. This guy can fight. And he's a legit threat to anybody at 135. So we've seen that for a while. And we know he's fun. We know he's entertaining. We've just been waiting for that step. And now it looks like that step is coming next. It looks like there's fun stuff developing at 135. And William Zepeda is in that picture. It looks like the Baranchik fight can be next. And I'm fine with that. And it will be a fun fight. And I fully expect Zepeda to stop Baranchik in a title fight. But we're going to get a clearer picture when the step up comes of who Zepeda, where his ceiling is. We know who he is. He clearly has an identity, and that's a big part of it. A lot of these fighters just can't develop an identity. We talk about team sports. When I coach, this is the thing I tell the kids, like, we have to have an identity as a team. You have to have an identity to have a brand. William Zepeda has already built his identity. He's building his brand. That's a big part of it. Now it's just, does this talent translate to the top level? That's the question left to be answered. And I think we'll start to get a better understanding of that next. Always thankful for Shakur and his Twitter son minions immediately after, reminding me how little I know about boxing. We just don't know, right? It's like you walk in the art gallery and you just can't possibly understand the complexity of the art in front of you, right? And it's just like some triangles and some squares. And like I said, I was telling y'all Friday, I get invited to art galleries in New Orleans, and I'm like, I walk in, I'm like, this is it. Like, I'm just whispering to the people who bring me, this is it. This is the art. And it's like, it looks like stick figures or whatever, and they're trying to pass it off as great art, right? And if somebody has to explain the art to you, is it really art? They have to explain to you what it is. When I walk into an art gallery and it's special, I'm going to know it's special. I'm going to know. If I'm watching a movie and you have to explain to me what it all is, I'm going to know a special movie, a meaningful movie if I'm watching it. I'm going to know it. Look, we all know the dude is talented. We all know that stuff. And more on that a minute, man. Like, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I got a lot to say on the Shakur stuff. But as far as Zepeda, dude's fun as hell, man. Fun as hell, and he looks really good. And if you think, like, if there are people out there still discounting this guy, like, yeah, that's good at that level, but wait till he gets in there with Shakur. Wait till he gets, like, if you think he's a walkover for Shakur, Tank, Loma, I think you got another thing coming. As long as this guy can make 135 and he's fighting like that, I'm telling you, it can translate to any fight at that weight class. This guy would destroy and mangle Frank Martin, for instance. Left of Frank Martin. After he would maybe decapitate that dude. No contest. This dude would beat Isaac Cruz easily. And what a bloodbath that would be. It would be a war, but he'd easily beat Isaac Cruz. Like, come on. Rolly Romero, he would knock Rolly Romero's head into the 27th row. It would just be hilarious. The dude's good. He's good. Shock Foster. And I don't even really. This just kills me to no end. And this pissed me off big time last night, man. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. Usually I just like, I mean, I've taken like that approach to the sport now where you just kind of rub stuff off and you expect short bus stuff to happen in this sport, right? You expect, and you just kind of laugh it off a lot and then just shrug it off and say whatever. But this last night just stopped me in my tracks. It was just one of those things, man. It just pissed me off to no end. Part of it is I don't like seeing bad things happen to good people. I don't like to see bad things happen to hardworking people. People who get it through the mud, people who have earned everything that they've gotten, and then they just have bad stuff that happens to them, and they're not deserving of it. They're not deserving of those bad things happening to them. And it was that, seeing a dude cry in a post-fight press conference because he's heartbroken. Imagine doing an 8 to 10 week training camp and you've had tough fight after tough fight and you win easily. He won easily. And look, you can criticize a little bit. Should he have opened up a little more against Conceição? Yeah, you can say that stuff. That's fair. But still, this was a clear, decisive, easy, wide victory. There's no, I didn't see a single unofficial scorecard come close to having Conceição win the fight. On top of that, y'all know me. I hawk the live betting odds. I'm watching, looking for value. There's no value because Shock Foster is such a wide favorite as the fight's going on, round by round by round. 13-1 favorite, 9-1 favorite, back up to 13-1, 20-1 favorite. This fight is not close. Nobody sees this fight close. Yet two people. There are three people who they're of utmost importance. The judges, and then you got the referee in the ring. And you constantly see look, I almost fell into it because that's what bothers me about this. People keep saying incompetence. It's not incompetence at this point. Incompetence. I watched Gallo versus Bam last week, and I see two judges who clearly saw a completely different fight than the one everybody else saw. One of them shockingly had Gallo up. One of them shockingly had it a draw. Ioka versus Martinez, I see people complaining about the 120 to 108 scorecard. I haven't seen. I can't speak on it, but I see more of these, right? And some of them aren't even making sense at this point. Because it's two different things, right? It's generally, as a judge, you want to score for the house fighter. That way the house continues to invite you back. And you continue to get jobs that way. So it explains away Paul Williams getting a victory over Arislandi Lara. Juan Diaz getting a victory over Paulie Malignaggi in the first fight. It explains that away, right? Of course, they rigged it for the house fighter. That sucks. It's terrible for that person. We should be speaking out. But it makes sense in that we understand this is a corrupt sport and you price that in. And as a bettor, as a gambler, you price that into the lines. It's the reason that I bet Mosley Jr. versus Danny Jacobs just to go the distance. And I couldn't pull the trigger on Mosley Jr. decision because even if he wins, why can I trust the judges to do the right thing? I picked Diaz versus Masvidal to go the distance. That was my bet. I wanted to pick Diaz decision, and these guys are getting decisions, but can I trust the judges to do it? Is the problem. And you have a bunch of bettors out there who made the right call and probably put a good bit of money on Shock Foster decision who can't get their money back. Because two people decided that Conceição was the victor and he's the champion. And we're all watching this and we're saying, this can't be incompetence. That's what I'm saying anyway. This can't be incompetence. There's no way professional judges can't see what, look, you don't even have to have a trained eye. Just have anybody come in and watch the fight. They'd all have Shock Foster winning the fight. But somehow 2 of the 3 judges see it completely different. How? So it's not just the house fighter, right? Because why would you give it to Kansei Sao over Shock Foster? Kansei Sao is not a marketable fighter. Shock Foster isn't either, but Kansei Sao is not the guy that you gift a belt to if you're top ranked. There's nothing to gain from them off of that, right? There's nothing to gain over gifting a belt to Gallo Estrada over Bam Rodriguez if it goes decision, right? Why would you do that? So there's something deeper going on. And I think what's at play here, fellas, and this is, you need to be looking for this, and this has always been the case in boxing. When the mob was running boxing, they'd get to certain fighters, throw a fight, right? I'm sure they would get to officials, score it this way, right? But look at how we talk about sports betting. Look at how prevalent it is now. Look how much we talk about it. Go back to YouTube boxing 10, 15 years ago. Nobody talked about line sports betting. You didn't have all these shows talking about it. You had offshore accounts 15 years ago that I was on, and there were no boxing lines on it. There were the 3 major sports, maybe a couple other, no boxing. Now you have boxing betting exposure everywhere. Everybody's exposed to it. Handles. Look, these are undercard fights too. Look at all the undercard fights that I bet on yesterday. Prospects to drive the parlay lines down, right? Because in boxing, you just don't get too many even odds fights. So even the undercards fights, you have a lot of money at play. You have a lot of handles. So when you have in the major sports, you have these scandals, these betting scandals of referees being gotten to, they're getting the referees, they're getting to certain players, right? And players get caught betting. When you have that stuff, fellas, in the major sports, just think of how prevalent and rampant it is in a already corrupt sport as boxing. The reality of the situation here is maybe or maybe not WBC does anything about this. That's the sad part about this, because they're corrupt to the core. The referees, and they know this, and not the referee, the judges know that they're nameless, faceless people. They're names, but you're going to forget them 2 days from now. You're going to forget them 3 days from now. And they're going to be back, and you're going to forget about these decisions. That's the reality of the situation. So they know that they can take advantage of this. And when you have particularly a fight like this, where it's a clearly a decision fight, that's why we told you to bet it. It's clearly a decision fight. So just bet this to go to decision. That's all you need to do. It's clearly a decision fight, and you have a guy who's a slight underdog, so you know it could be a close fight, and this wasn't a close fight. Shouldn't have been. It's easy to get to 2 judges and say, look, make sure this decision goes this way, and it'll be a nice little kickback for you on the back end. Boxing is set up for stuff like this to happen. That's the reality of the situation. And the more people you have betting, the more you're going to see this stuff. There have been so many decisions like this, especially in 2024, where you're like, this makes no sense. There's no way a trained eye can see it like this, because an untrained eye could clearly see it for what it is. So for you to have 7 to 8 rounds for Kansei Sao, and CompuBox was being generous for Kansei Sao, there's no way in any round this guy landed double digits punches. This was a wide decision. The unofficial ESPN scorecard had it 119-109, and that sounded about right. How in the world could you have Kansei Sao winning this fight? It's corruption. And more people need to be saying the C word than the I word. It's not incompetence. It's corruption is what it is. It's corruption. And if this was a proper sport, many people would be investigated right now. WBC would have already made a statement about this. And nothing. And we got to watch Shock Foster cry after the fight. And this dude, man, this is what's sad about it, is this dude is what's right about the sport. And I've said this many times about the dude. Upsets Ray Vargas. goes into hostile territory, everything working against him, small ring. He's down in the fight. He knocks out Rocky Hernandez. Wins a close fight against Abraham Nova. And then he outboxes Conte Sao. So the one criticism of him is, yeah, maybe he should have been a little more aggressive. Maybe. But he still won the fight wide. Still won the fight wide. And the reality of the situation now is he's got one more fight with Top Rank. We don't know if he'll be able to fight for his belt back. The sad part is nobody even wants to see Shock Foster versus Conceição again. Nobody wants to see that fight again. So why do we need to see this fight again just because two short bus people, corrupt people, decide for whatever reason they want to get Conceição the victory? And I'm sure it has a lot to do with money. So now we got to run this fight back to get the belt back to Shock Foster where it belongs already. And I'm watching this last night, man, and I'm like, God, this sport just cannot get out of its own way. It just cannot get out of its own way. But it's just the reality of situations. We're going to have to put up with this forever because nobody's going to do anything about it. And it's the perfect environment for corruption, this sport. Especially when you have this amount of money, fellas, involved in this sport now. I'm not talking about fighter pay. I'm not talking about what the promoters are making, the networks are making, the arenas are making. I'm talking about gambling, how big it is now. And look, I like it. I like sports betting, but the reality of the situation, man, is so much money. There's so much money in this that a corrupt person is going to walk in the door and say, all I got to get to is these two people who are barely making any money for judging these fights. It's probably a side hustle to them. So I can get them some money, thousands of dollars, just to have Conceição win the fight. And nobody's going to do anything about it. If you're expecting something to happen of this, maybe there'll be a slap on the wrist, but these guys are going to be back. They're going to be back. It's just the reality of it, fellas. I feel so bad for Shock Foster. That's part of it, man. It's just, he seems like, I said it after the fight, solid pro, good champ, like good pro, solid champ. He's a solid champion. He's not great, but he's doing everything that's expected of him. He's doing everything that's asked of him. It's refreshing in today's American boxing market where dudes are just constantly whining about everything. Oh my God. Oh, and this dude's just putting his head down and going to work. And he's the one to get robbed. I wish they would have robbed Shakur over this dude. Rob Shakur. You don't rob this dude. He's a good dude, man. And he needs the belt. He needs it. Look, some guys don't need belts. Most guys do. Shakur is one of the ones that really needs that belt. And you're taking it from him, of all people. It's sad. It's sad to see. It's sad to see good people get rolled over in this corrupt sport. Top Rank, just overall. Abdullah Mason fought last night. He got me my knockout. I'm very impressed with this guy. Just like I'm impressed with Shushu Carrington. These guys, they look to me like they want to entertain. They look to me like the past Top Rank crop that seems like it's moving on from Top Rank pretty soon. Shakur, Teofimo, the guys who had a lot of promise coming through the door, but have sort of faltered a little bit as of late and don't seem like they care much about entertaining the fans. Don't seem like they care much about building an organic base. They feel like they're above it. It seems like Abdullah Mason, Shushu Carrington, Emiliano Vargas, it seems like they get it. It seems like a more level-headed, entertaining, fan-friendly crop of top-ranked fighter than the ones previous. Top Rank is in this weird position right now where they're sort of in a rebuilding mode. They're in this weird position where Teofimo might be out of the door soon. Shakur's out the door. And they seem conceded to the fact that these guys we didn't get there with those guys. We didn't get there with these guys, unfortunately. It just never got to the desired. It never got to the desired end result. It never got to its destination that we wanted it to get to. So now they're in a rebuilding mode, but this is tough for Top Rank because Teofimo fights Stevie Claggett. Doesn't look that good. Shakur Stevenson, he's in this fight, right? And he's in there with Artem, and we'll talk about that. And quite frankly, he looked okay, but he bored again. And then you got to do this thing where the prospects, though, aren't ready. You got this middle ground. You got the Shock Fosters and Kansei Salas, but that's just not going to do it, right? And then you got these young, talented fighters coming up, the ones I talked about, Shushu, Abdullah, Emiliano. They're not ready yet. So Top Rank has sort of been in this mode right now where you have names and you have names fighting, but these are all showcase fights. So it's a tough area where Top Rank is right now. It's almost a rebuilding era that they're in. But I was impressed with Abdullah Mason. Lomachenko, another guy, probably out the door, right? Never became undisputed like Bob wanted, and he's likely out the door in the next year or two. So you got to wait for this next crop of guys to come up. You got to wait. And we don't know what top rank ESPN relationship is going to be a year or two down the line. What's the budget going to be? So a lot of unknowns. But Shakur. Let me get to this right quick. Shout out D-Style Boxing, $2 super chat, listening while at lunch at work, and look forward to talking to D-Style about all this week and getting his insights on this stuff. But Shakur. So last night, I played Shakur stoppage, and this was the last play on all my parlay. I had a nine leg parlay. I had a 6-leg parlay, and this was the last leg. I hit on everything else, and this is the last leg. And I'm just expecting this dude to. This fight is set up for you. Artem is set up for you. He's just not a good enough, versatile enough fighter if you're a special fighter to go 12 rounds. Right? This fight is set up for you, just like there was a disappointing thing about Teofimo last week. It's like Stevie Claggett is set up for you to knock his head off. We're expecting something from Teofimo. We're expecting special things of Shakur Stevenson. And this is the thing about those fighters is they're stagnant now. It's not. Look, I'm sure these guys will fight up to the level of competition, but it's deeper than that now. Because I hear people saying, well, Shakur will fight better against better opposition. Oh, I would hope so. But it's deeper than that. You don't want to show up for the fans who are showing up for you. That's number one. But number two, special fighters, man, especially if you're only fighting twice per year, you're showing growth. You don't put on this many lackluster performances, even if it's against opposition you're not up for. I'm watching this again last night, and fourth round, I immediately go to FanDuel, cash out. They're still offering me a cash out in the green. They're still offering me a cash out where I'm making a good bit of money. So I took it, and I said, I'm going to sleep. I turned off the TV, and I said, I'm going to watch it on my phone until I fall asleep. Let me get this, make sure it's right. All right, I'm good. 7th, 8th round, 9th round, somewhere in there, I just fall asleep. I can't do this anymore, man. I can't do it anymore. And I watched the rest of the replay. First thing, I woke up Sunday this morning, and I see the meltdown of dudes like, why is ESPN showing people leaving the? What do you want them to show? And then you dudes whine so much. Just like your favorite fighters. You're just whining so much. It's the whole American market at this point. American fighters are whining. American fight fans are whining. Why are you talking about this guy doing that thing? It's not fair. Do you watch other sports? Because if you watch other sports, you will see other sports where they show fans leaving all the time. It's a blowout now. There's the fans leaving. Visiting team took a 3-touchdown lead. Look at the home fans leaving. They'll show the parking lot. They'll show cars leaving in other sports. And these dudes are blaming Bob Arum for everything. Bob Arum. Bob Arum's racist. Bob Arum can't promote these fighters. Can one of these dudes promote themselves? Can one of these dudes throw some punches? Can you knock somebody out for the love of God? Can you knock out a 40-1 underdog? You can't? You can't knock out a 25-1 underdog, a 40-1 underdog, a 30-1 underdog, and we got to pull out the small violin for the fighter who has a hurt shoulder or he hurt his hand. Why do they have to show the fans? It's not right. Do you think Bob Arum called ESPN? Because Bob didn't even show up at the fight. Bob didn't even show up to the fight. He's like, I don't care. This dude's about to leave anyway. He's going to put everybody to sleep. He's going to show me falling asleep in the front row because this dude's the cure for insomnia. He's boxing's version of Dr. Kevorkian. And he's not putting his opponents to sleep. He's putting us to sleep. And these dudes are whining about ESPN showing people leave. And they're blaming Bob for it. They're blaming Top Rank for it. Do you think Bob called ESPN? Do you think Bob cared enough to call ESPN and say, look, show those people leave? Bob doesn't even know the people are leaving. He's not there. Show those people leaving. Make Shakur look bad. Show those people leaving right now. Get those cameras on those people leaving. That's ESPN showing people leaving. Because ESPN's probably frustrated with this. He's like, why do you keep putting this dude in a main event? Dudes are holding cameras, probably like, they're like holding their cameras, trying to stay awake, filming this dude. You got production managers back there, like barely staying awake. The commentators are barely staying awake. And then you got people out there, content creators, saying that this is special. This is special. This beats anybody. Like, it's going to take an all-time great. It would take resurrecting an all-time great to beat this guy at 135. You know what I saw last night, fellas? All right, we're good. You know what I saw last night? And this is worse. Because against De Los Santos, he didn't try. Against Nakathila, he didn't try. So the narrative is that Shakur is just not going to get up for this level of competition and he's going to coast him. But you know what I saw last night instead? I saw a stagnant fighter. I saw a guy who, and Steve Kim, I got to give Steve Kim credit for this because I saw his post this morning. I was like, yes, that's what I saw. He just put it in better words. Is I see a fighter who's not completely developed. I just throw out the word stagnant. He's stagnant. I see a fighter who offensively in particular is not fully developed yet. 22 fights, just hasn't been fighting enough, hasn't been sharpening his sword. He is a super talented, special talent, right? But there were openings all over the place last night. I said the same thing of Teofimo Claggett last week. Claggett left openings all over the ring for Teofimo to take advantage of it and knock the guy's head off. And I saw the same thing last night. Artem, he's acting like Artem was this walking, talking, punching a Rubik's Cube. And it wasn't. Like, he's Artem. It's Artem. Dude's got like 12 fights. And Frank Martin knocked him down. For the love of God, 30-year-old prospect Frank Martin knocked this dude down. He's not running as much as Shakur made it out to be. He used lateral movement, got back to the center of the ring and reset. He was doing that often, but that's not running. And then he would get in the pocket, and there were openings for Shakur to counter all over the place. And I'm watching it, and Shakur is telling you he wants to stop the guy. He's saying in the ring, I need to stop this guy. He's saying in the corner in between rounds, I need to stop this guy. I want to stop this guy. He says after the fight, yeah, I wanted to stop him. I tried. I wanted to stop. I was trying to walk him down. You see him in the second half of the fight. He's starting to walk Artem down, and yet he can't finish the job. And it wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't like, look, he is boring. He doesn't care about the fans, all that stuff. But I do feel like last night he wanted to put on a show. He was just incapable. He was incapable. This is a guy who's been built up. And look, I've been right there on that bandwagon. He's possibly a pound for pound king in a couple years. And he should be a top 10 pound for pound guy. But now, do y'all see a top 10 pound for pound guy when y'all watch him fight? I saw a guy who wanted badly to knock out Artem. He just couldn't figure out how to do it. He doesn't know how to go out there and be aggressive. He doesn't know how to go out there and take the fight to somebody. He's got to feel it out early. He's got to look for the openings. He's a very poised fighter, all that stuff. A great defensive fighter, but the part of the defense that he's missing, and look, he's a CompuBox plus minus wizard, right? He's the king of the plus minus. And that's enough to win rounds, right? And it's enough to win decisions. But at this point, we're looking at a guy who at 130, he was a boxer puncher. Now he's just a pure boxer at 135. I think we have enough data in 3 fights now to see that this guy isn't a puncher at 135. He's a guy who he's physical enough to walk guys down, but he's pillow fisted at 135. He was missing clear openings from Artem last night, counter punching openings. He was missing them. Artem was shrugging off his punches. I mean, Shakur did some good work to the body, but it wasn't good enough. I see an incomplete, stagnant fighter, particularly offensively for Shakur Stevenson. And my concern is, once again, it's going to be another new age fighter who doesn't live up to the expectations or come even close to it. I didn't see last night a guy who just showed up and mailed it in and said, I'm not worried about the fans tonight, although we already know that about him, but we're just going to coast tonight. That's not what I saw. I saw a guy who wanted to knock Artem out. I saw a guy who wanted to put on a show, but he was incapable of doing it. It's not in his nature. It's ironic that he's there with Bud, right? Because that's what Bud is. That's what Bud does. They're both poised fighters. They have that in common. They're both capable of being great defensive fighters. Bud can fight that way, but Shakur is not capable of that. Shakur is not capable of taking the fight to somebody. He's not capable of knocking people out at 135. He's just not capable of doing this stuff. And it's being written off as, well, he's just going to fight to the level of competition. And you just wait. If he's in there with a fight, with a great fighter, you just wait. Maybe so. Maybe so. But what happens when he's not? He tried, man. Like he tried last night. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. And what aggravated me last night too was, all right, we see Shock Foster robbed, and that just put me in a terrible mood. And once again, it's like the crack addict, right, who gets the high and then comes down, and that's what happened last night. Because William Zepeda puts on an absolute show. You're like, this dude is that dude, and then you watch Shock Foster get robbed. You're like, good Lord, man, can somebody stone those 2 judges to death, right? And then after Shock Foster is robbed, they cut to a commercial, and then they come back, and you're like, all right, we're going to get Shakur to the ring, and it's thankfully going to be before midnight Eastern, right? And your eyes are getting heavy. You're like, you're already pissed off from Shock Foster getting robbed. And then what happens? Mark Kriegel. It's another Mark Kriegel segment. It's for the love of God, can ESPN please get the point that we do not want to watch this dude? Can we please get the point that we just want to get to the fights? Do we need to see another Mark Kriegel segment? And nothing against him. He's probably a good dude, but we do not want to see this. So you'd think we're finally going to get to the main event, and then they show Mark Kriegel. And he's interviewing Shakur Stevenson. It's a taped interview, right? And he's like, is Shakur whining again? Is this dude capable of doing an interview? Is he capable of talking or tweeting without whining? And it's nothing against him. It's just like, Top Rank, I just thought they were going to offer me more than $3 million per fight. I thought they're giving this guy that and that guy this, and they just won't give me the Lomachenko fight. And Lomachenko this, and Tank that, and this it. And then whatever he's whining, my shoulder in the last fight. And, is this supposed to make me want to watch this guy? At this point, let's just get this over with, and we'll be done with the Shakur ESPN thing. Let's just end this. This clearly didn't work. And the dude's whining. And Kriegel's just playing to it. Like, Kriegel's trying to wax poetic, What do you think, champ? What do you think, champ? What do you think Top Rank's going to do, champ? And he's just whining. He's just whining. Shakur, Lomachenko this and my shoulder, and then, it's just not fair. It's not fair. They don't appreciate the art of the sport. They don't appreciate sweet science. It's like, for the love of God, man, just get this dude in the ring and let's get this over with. And it starts in first round, nothing. And Artem wins the first round just because he threw a punch. He won the first round. Artem won the first round because he wasn't a complete mannequin. And Artem's trying, right? And nothing's happening. Second round, nothing's happening. Third round, nothing's happening. And I'm like, this dude's doing this? Like, is this really happening? Is he really trying to feel out Artem Herderberin? Is this what we're doing? He's not just going to step to this dude, but he's feeling out Artem because he's really trying. It's not that he's trying to stink out the fight. That's not what happened last night. That's what happened against De Los Santos. That's what happened against Nakathila. Remember the Nakathila fight, man? I was beside myself. This dude has one hand, and it's the right hand, and he cannot set it up. Shakur, please, for the love of God, get this dude out of it. And he didn't. He didn't even try. He didn't even try against De Los Santos. He's trying last night. He's trying in his own way, in his own very boring, paint-drying, grass-growing way to stop Artem and put on a show. He's just not capable of doing it. And I get to the end of the fourth round. I look at FanDuel. I'm like, please offer me a cash out because I just can't do this, man. I can't do this. This dude can mess up a wet dream because I have 6-fight parlay, 9-fight parlay, straight bets, and they're all hitting. I'm on fire today, and this dude is going to mess it up by not getting a knockout against Artem Herderberin. And he's going to ruin my night. Cash out, cash out, cash out. Thank you, FanDuel, for the parachute. Thank you, because that was the stupidest bet, relying on this guy to get a stoppage because he's just incapable. It's not just that he's not trying. When he is trying, he's just incapable of doing it. Fifth round, sixth round, and I'm trying, man. Like I got the phone up. I'm trying, and my eyes are like, I'm like, Weekend at Bernie's. I'm like holding my eyes open, and the dude's just... He's not going to stop this dude. He's not going to stop him. Same thing I said with Tiafimo last week against Stevie Claggett. Stevie Claggett. These are the special fighters y'all told me about. These are the ones. And they can't stop Stevie Claggett and Artem Herderberin. What is this? Man, I love Bam Rodriguez because we don't deal with this with Bam. Bam goes in there and he handles business. We don't have to worry about it. And if he doesn't get the stoppage, the dude's not whining about it after. If the dude gets injured, he doesn't whine about it, and he's right back in training camp a couple months later. When am I going to get my three? They only offer me $3 million per year. What about me? What about me? I don't know. What about you? So this is, look, man, and this is shout out to Vinny Paz, who is not Vinny Paz the fighter, but Vinny Paz the rapper, and great rapper, by the way, and great podcast. Great podcast here on YouTube, and I'm sure on um, other forums as well. A lot of respect for that dude. So he had a post earlier, and this is just, he's a level-headed dude, great dude, highly intelligent. But I have some disagreements with this post, and it's nothing personal. It's just some disagreements between, I think, two level-headed dudes who just want to talk about the sport, right? And so the post read this. Let me get this comment down real quick. Where is it? Oops. All right. So shout out to Vinny Paz. Shakur has been having issues getting guys to fight him. Correct. That is correct. And we can tell a lot about a fighter by how his handlers handle him. And look, if Shakur could get the fights, his handlers would have no problem putting him in the fights, right? And how his peers in and around his weight class react when his name is brought up. And dudes just don't want to fight Shakur. That is true. That is true. So that tells us that dude is talented. That tells us that the dude is likely a great fighter. The reason that Shakur is not getting the fights at 135 is very different than the reason that Tank is not fighting the fights at 135. Nobody is ducking Tank. There isn't a fighter in the world ducking Tank Davis. But there are fighters, a lot of them, who don't want to fight Shakur. This is true. Complete agreement so far. He's been understandably frustrated by the lack of big fights, paydays. Okay. So we move past that. Herner gave Frank Martin hell. And he did. It's a close fight against 30-year-old prospect Frank. And Shakur just made him look like a sparring partner. So the issue that I have with that is you're comparing him to Frank. It's like, no, he's Frank. So I just hold Shakur to higher standards, I guess. Like I wouldn't compare him, contrast him to Frank. He's like well past that. And I think we should have higher standards of Shakur in fights like this. We should expect more of Shakur and Teofimo in fights like they've been in with the past 2 weekends. If you think of any of the names champs at 135 are going to get in there with him after that masterclass, I have a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. So here's the thing. Masterclass. I just didn't see it. Like that's the first issue I have with the post. And once again, it's not anything personal because highly respect this dude, man. Really do. Vinny Paz is the truth. One of the great podcasts out there in the boxing world. I didn't see a master class last night. I don't see it. I saw a guy who offensively, he's not a great offensive fighter. He's a great defensive fighter and a good offensive fighter, I would say. Doesn't have pop behind the shots. Hasn't fully developed into the offensive thing, like and how to walk guys down and sit on your punches and cut off the ring when they're trying to escape. William Zepeda, for instance, would not have let Artem escape and reset the way he was doing. Tank Davis would not have let Artem do stuff like that, escape and reset. He just wouldn't have. And if we're going to compare him to Frank, at least Frank got a knockdown in this fight against Artem. So I didn't see a master class. I just saw a mid performance. That's what I saw. It's what I said against Benavidez versus Vodzik with the silent G. It's like, this is it. This is what y'all are drooling and fawning over. Maybe my standards are too high for these fighters. I don't know. But I think this is what I've been getting at is I think the I think our standards of these American fighters are just way too low. Our expectations of them are just way too low. If you're gonna sell me, like some of the people in the boxing world try to sell me that this guy is the second coming of Pernell Whitaker, I better see some Pernell Whitaker, and I don't see it. I don't see it. In the past, you saw it with guys like Hagler, Charles Burley, Aaron Pryor, Paul Williams, Mike McCallum, and more recent times it was Prime, Triple G, Rigondeaux, Bud. Shakur is going to have to jump through all sorts of hoops to find a dance partner. And so will Boots after he packs up David Avanesian. Time is ticking. So this is the thing. And y'all have heard me say this before, right? I get, I'm empathetic to fighters who are at the top of their weight class or close to it and are great fighters who don't get the fights because clearly they're being frozen out. Bud was like that for years, right? But if you take this list right here, right? And let's take the more recent names, Paul Williams, Triple G, and you've heard me talk about the different avenues those guys took to get their fights. Bud, those are exciting fighters, and Shakur is not that. Rigondeaux wasn't, so I guess that's a better example, maybe Rigondeaux. But what did Triple G and Paul Williams do in order to get their fights? Because they got their fights. They got their fights. Paul Williams fought Antonio Margarito. He fought Carlos Quintana twice. But there were other guys clearly in the division who he wasn't going to get the fights with. Mayweather, Cotto. He just wasn't going to get those fights, so he took matters into his own hands. What did he do? He moved up. Moved up, fought Winky Wright. Was fighting fights at 154 and all the way up to 160. Moved up 2 weight classes. Was bouncing around 160, 154. Fought Sergio Martinez twice. Fought Winky Wright. And was about to land the, and he did land the Canelo fight before the motorcycle accident. He was going to fight Canelo at 154, I believe it was, until the motorcycle accident. But he moved up and assumed some risk. And in moving up, that aura that he had at 147 as the naturally taller opponent who threw a lot of punches went away. The guys at 154 and 160 weren't as fearful of him as the guys at 147. Boots, keep that in mind. What did Golovkin do? Golovkin took an opposite route, but equally effective route. And it took him a little longer to go this route, but he did it effectively. What did he do? He just mowed down the top opposition available to him at middleweight almost quarterly for a couple years until the division had to come to him because there was so much demand. He was knocking everybody out. He was an action fighter, and he had the fans behind him at that point. And they were saying, you've got to fight this guy. I don't care if you're lineal. I don't care if you think you're a champion. This is the champion at middleweight. And if you want to be the champion, you have to fight and beat him. The market dictated that. And it was Golovkin taking a different route. He's just saying, I'm going to stay in this weight class because this is my weight class, and I'm just going to mow down the top opposition. I'm going to forget the high minimums, all this stuff. I'm going to knock out people. I'm going to be entertaining. I'm going to put on highlight reel performance after highlight reel performance until you have to see me and continue to win in the same weight class. And it became his weight class, and the top guys had to fight him. He got the Canelo fight twice at middleweight. He got Danny Jacobs in there with him, Derevyanchenko. So he ended up getting the bigger fights, Murata in a super fight in Japan, by simply fighting the fights almost quarterly, fighting top competition, and mowing them down and being exciting. You know what he didn't do? And you know what Paul Williams didn't do? They didn't sit back and whine. They didn't sit down with interviews with Mark Kriegel right before the fight and say, "Oh, woe is me. I just can't. Like, the world is so unfair. I'm the most hated fighter in this sport. The world is so unfair." They didn't do any of that. They got to work. And I'm sure there was, this guy's ducking me, that guy's ducking me, I'm not getting this fight, but they were fighting the fights. They were fighting the best fights available to them. They didn't lock themselves into these deals to where they could only fight twice per year. It could only be against certain fighters because the overhead is so much, because you have to fight them, pay them this minimum per fight. And what I'm saying, man, is at a certain point, the whining and the gnashing of the teeth and I can't get this fight because this guy, it only goes so far with the public. And you know what doesn't help? It doesn't help when you're alienating and saying you don't care about the people who need to be in your corner in order to make it easier for you to get these fights. Paul Williams was an empathetic figure to the public. He was exciting, that helped, and he didn't demean the public. They had his back. Gennady Golovkin became this empathetic figure because he fought the fights, best fights available to him. He fought a lot. He was entertaining. He knocked people out, and he didn't talk down to the public all the time. He didn't say, "You just don't appreciate my art. You just don't appreciate what I do. You can't get it. You're not intelligent enough to understand what I'm doing. You don't understand the sweet science. You don't understand the artwork that I'm putting up in the gallery." D-Style says this all the time. It's like you walk into the restaurant and the food, you just don't like the food. And the chef and some of the patrons will say, "Well, you just don't understand the food. You just don't understand what the chef is doing and they're doing." Maybe I don't, but guess what? I don't like it, so I'm leaving. And that's where I'm at with Shakur right now. And that's why it's tougher for him to get these fights at this point. It's not just him being great with the tough style. It's watching him becomes almost like being in a dentist's office getting a root canal. That doesn't help. It doesn't help with public demand. It doesn't help to build fights. It doesn't help to grow demand for fights. He's at the point now, fellas, where dudes are out there. What's the dude's name on Twitter I saw earlier? Oh, the Adams boxing brothers. And he's out there saying, I think Shakur, you might just want to put him on some undercard fights. And he's serious. And I'm with him. Like, put him in Riyadh season and put him right after the Nick Ball fight or something. Like, put him right after Ray Ford. That's where we're at. Is this a main event fighter? And we're supposed to pay him $3 million per fight. Why? Because he's a great sweet scientist? You know, it's about how you make people feel at the end of the day. 10, 15, 20 years from now, are you going to tell your kids about the time you showed up at the Shakur Stevenson fight? Likely not, because you probably left in the 8th round. And you probably want to forget that you even spent money to go watch that. I'm watching Diaz versus Masvidal last night. And you know what happened? 18,000 plus filled that place. And they were there early. And they're eating it up. 10-round fight. And it's not good boxing. But they're at least throwing punches. There's some entertainment value behind it. And these guys have 17 losses, 15 losses, multiple draws in their sport. And they just get together one day and say, let's box each other. And I'm asking people about this. I'm like, why did they decide to box each other? That doesn't make sense to me. But they did. And they boxed each other. And they had a successful event. One of them made $500,000. One of them made $300,000. They didn't complain about the purses. They filled the arena, 18,000 people. The people are there early. They're rowdy. The place is electric. and apparently they put on a show because people were happy. They're not sweet scientists, but guess what? They make people feel a certain way. They've gotten people invested in them. They built their brands. What is Shakur's brand? What's his identity? His identity right now, whether you like it or not, is he's a boring but talented fighter. A talented but boring fighter. And the worrying thing, I already knew that about him, but the worrying thing last night was I saw something different last night. This was different than Nakathila. It was different than De Los Santos. And this is the point I really want to hammer home about last night is I saw a stagnant fighter. I saw a guy who wanted to, he didn't want to coast last night. He didn't go in there saying, I'm not worried about the fans and boy. I really feel like in his heart of hearts, he wanted to show out for people last night. I think it bothers him in his heart of hearts that he's considered boring. I think he wants to be viewed the same way Tank is viewed in circles. And I think he tried last night to be sort of like Tank Davis and be economical early on and start to time Artem and then ratchet it up in the middle rounds and start to walk him down. And he tried to walk Artem down and he's landing punches, but they're not all that effective. They're winning rounds. He's the plus minus CompuBox king, right? They're winning rounds. He's winning rounds fairly easy, but that's it. Like there's nothing in there that it's just not getting to his destination. He wanted to stop Artem last night and he couldn't do it. And now you're going to start to hear more. Last fight, it was the shoulder, right? And this fight is going to be, yeah, but Artem's tough. And Artem almost beat Frank Martin. And that makes Artem a great fighter, right? He tried and Artem was running, right? And they weren't booing Shakur. They were booing Artem for running. Artem wasn't running. And they weren't booing Artem. And they weren't walking out on Artem. They were walking out on Shakur. You need to be realistic about this. And you need to be realistic about the fact that he wanted to show out last night. He just doesn't know how to do it. He doesn't have that in his arsenal. And that's still what he has, still might be good enough to be the top lightweight if he gets the fights. It still might be good enough to get him into the top 6, 7 pound for pound someday. It still may be good enough for that. But he should have developed that part of his game by now. He should have developed that by now, is my point. He should have that. He's talented enough to have that, and he doesn't. Why? Why has his career and why have his skills stagnated? Why after he fights Artem does he say, I need to go work on cutting off the ring? You should be able to cut off Artem by now. Especially if you're demanding $5 million plus per fight. Especially if you're the modern day Pernell Whitaker. You think Pernell Whitaker would have had trouble cutting off the ring against Artem and stopping him? No. So at this point, he goes into free agency like this. It is what it is. And at this point, good luck getting the fights. Good luck getting the fights. At 135, you're certainly not doing yourself any favors. And the empathy only goes so far. It's a sport, and the top fighters should be fighting the top fighters. That is true. But the empathy only goes so far if you're fighting twice per year and you're demanding a well above market value for these fights, and you're possibly pricing yourself out of fights. So this isn't all just the other guys. This isn't all just the market. This is Shakur too. He's not doing himself favors. So That's where we are. That's where we are. I have a lot of content up this week, fellas. Appreciate y'all rolling through on this Sunday evening. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's weekend. God bless. Peace.